Hello, this is the TradeSite U.S. Stocks, Futures, and Forex Market Preview for the week beginning Sunday, February 5th, 2023, ending Friday the 10th. Got 2 full weeks ahead of us before we hit the President's Day holiday, which I believe is on the 20th this year. That's fine. So, here's the dollar index daily chart. Again, this thing's been so boring for over a month now. It did have the 13 buy signal. It did dip a little lower, but now it's kind of coming back. So we'll see what that leads to. But we're going to go through the Forex stuff quick because there's not that much to talk about. The pound dollar dipped a bit this week, but again, for 2 months, it's been stuck in a very narrow range comparatively. The euro dollar has been worse. Let's look at the euro dollar for the last month or so. Here's the pound yen, also stuck in a range for 2 weeks. So not much there. Here's the ES front month futures contract. This is the daily chart of the broad market in futures form. And, we had the 13 sell signal finally, and then broke the risk line pretty quick, but we haven't taken out the high of the candle since then, so the risk line's still in play, and we're pretty much right at the risk line, which we all know what that means. So it has not negated the signal. We're right at this point where, things could get bad. We'll see what happens. But the S&P cash, on the other hand, did take out. No, it hasn't. It closed above it and hasn't taken out the high of the prior candle. So the cash is the same, 13 sell signal, and has not busted the risk line yet. But we'll see what happens. NASDAQ 100 with the gap up Thursday and then the retreat on Friday. Not much there. The Russell 2000 heading back near 9-month highs. Getting very close on the Russell. That's interesting. Remember, this time of year is always good for the small caps. A lot of new money comes into the smaller cap stocks before tax day in April, so that makes a little bit of sense at least. Crude oil sitting at 73.52, which is good, near the lows. Having said that, there's a 13 buy signal now in place off the seeker on the daily chart there, so we'll see what that leads to. Gold came crashing back quite a bit, actually, after being on the rise for the last couple months. Retraced quite a bit over the last few days. All right, let's look at some of the other things we tend to look at. Bitcoin is at basically 23,000 at this point. Back up near 6-month highs. TLT, the 20-year bond ETF, didn't do anything this week, so there's not much to talk about there. There's no signal. There's no chart pattern. Again, we always look for chart patterns and signals, and we only comment on the ones where we actually see something. The VIX is interesting because we still have not. We did close below the risk line and trade lower than that, but we're back to the risk line from that 13 buy signal that's in place. Remember, if the VIX spikes, then the market should retreat. We'll see what happens. Advanced decline ratio on the NASDAQ was positive on Friday. The 10-day moving, it was negative on Friday. With the 10-day moving average has been positive, but Friday was really the worst in a month, negative 1,403. The trend closes at 1.15, puts the 10-day at 1.03. There's a big number that's going to drop off so many days back, and we'll see when that happens because that'll be kind of a big deal. That might bring that number down. But again, until you get under the blue line on the 10-day moving average, which is the orange line, it doesn't really matter. The ES front month, this is the 5-day, 5-minute chart, and you can see the whole week. So it wasn't a very exciting week. I mean, Monday, small gap down, dead flat. Tuesday, inside of Monday, basically, but filled the gap. So at that point, we're even for the week. Wednesday's dead flat. Then you get the Fed announcement, and then the Fed, the meeting and the press conference. The press conference spiked the market. Gap up Thursday. A little bit of wiggle room both ways. Friday gap down, filled the gap, and then closed. So the whole week we close up like 30 points or whatever, or 50 points on the S&P. NASDAQ, not much different there. A little bit of a close higher at the end of the week. In terms of some of the stocks, Apple closed at new highs for the last few months, but no signal here yet. We do have a 9-bar startup phase complete. Amazon, which had that 13 buy signal, and it held the risk line of that perfectly. That was back at $82, and now it's at 100, and it got up to 115 almost. Then earnings brought it back a bit. The last couple of days, Meta gapped up on earnings, sitting at 7-month highs. Google also back up, although it was down Friday, but back up before that with the earnings. Goldman Sachs and the Fed, by the way. Goldman Sachs, more positive than negative. Netflix closing near highs for the last several months. Tesla also, at least 2-month highs. Cup there, by the way. Breakout over 200 or so would be interesting. NVIDIA not much here. We're making our way towards a 13 cell signal in Zoom. Not much here either. So, it's been interesting. There's not the problem we're seeing right now is that the chart patterns are not really there. There's not a lot of construction in the market. The intraday action is hit or miss. We haven't had a ton of days that have been super exciting. So there's not a lot to talk about from that perspective. In terms of economic data coming out here in the U.S. this week, we've got nothing on Monday. Loan officer survey doesn't matter. On Tuesday, trade balance, that's one of our big three each month, so we'll be half size ahead of that in Forex. But that number's at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. Fed Chair Powell speaks at noon. And then we got Wednesday, a couple of Fed members speaking. Final wholesale inventories at 10 a.m. Crude oil inventories at 10:30. 10-year bond auction at 1. Very light week for news. We're already to Thursday. We haven't really said anything important. So that's interesting. Thursday, unemployment, the weekly initial and continuing jobless numbers, natty gas at 10:30. Man, this is a light week for any kind of data. Friday, University of Michigan sentiment at 10 a.m. and the federal budget balance at 2. I mean, this is the least amount of news you ever see out of the U.S., but the trade balance is the big focus for the week. It should be a clean and open week. We've got a lot going on in the world, but not so much financially at this point. I think with the Fed behind us, the Fed meeting last week, and the inflation numbers locked. I don't know what else to say. Charts as usual brought to you by eSignal. By NinjaTrader. If you've not yet trial of our services, feel free to do so. We will help you out for a couple of weeks. Have a great trading week.